Good evening, everybody, and it's lovely to see such a if we could please stand for the local prayer and acknowledge. We acknowledge the traditional owners, custodians of our beautiful lands and us around.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council, out to be an agent of change, people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations for the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves.
Gratefully acknowledge the men and women of the Navy sacrifice freedom, and we also please be seated. We do have one apology tonight, and that is Councillor Hales, and there are no items table. Item 5.1, minutes of the previous meeting, and the recommendation is as read. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you very much, Braden. And do I have someone to second that? Thank you very much, Marilyn. Do either of you have in relation to those minutes? Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to raise? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I won't be supporting this recommendation. As the members are aware, I wrote an email to the CEO expressing my points of views about lack of process in those agenda items, and minutes don't reflect that. We disagree on certain points. That's so be it, but that's why I can't support this.
Are there any further comments in relation to the minutes? If not, all those in favour? Those against? Carried, thank you. We do have 3 deputations tonight. The first deputation is from Mr. Suba and Mr. Higgins in relation to the Avenue of Honour on behalf of the Victor Harbour RSL sub-branch. And this deputation relates to item 12 on the agenda, which is on page 187. So that Mr. Suba and Mr. Higgins don't have to wait until that item comes up, we'll go to that straight after their deputation. Are you here, Mr. Suba or Mr. Higgins? Thank you. Would you like to come down to the back there, and perhaps Councillor Kemp can show you how to turn the microphone on? Are you Mr. Suba or Mr. Higgins? How would you like me to?
Bob Higgins.
Bob Higgins. Thank you for coming, Mr. Higgins. You do have 10 minutes for your deputation, and that will include questions that the elected members may have for you as well. So you may need to keep it shiny. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Lord Mayor, Dr. Jenkins, elected members of the Victor Harbour Council. My name is Bob Higgins and I'm a Victor Harbour resident. A group of ratepayers in conjunction with the Victor Harbour sub-branch of the RSL, represented by Mr. Bob Suba, is in attendance tonight. The purpose of this proposal is to plant an avenue of trees along Pages Road off Inman Valley Road, better known as the entrance to the Victor Harbour Golf Club. I live just 500 metres up the road from the golf club, and every time I drive into the golf club I think, how can we make the most of this beautifully located expanse of land leading to the golf course? Why don't we plant an avenue of trees along the lines of the Ballarat Avenue of Honour, erected 100 years ago to acknowledge those who served in World War I? In a similar vein, our avenue of trees could be dedicated to locals who have valiantly served in all wars. In addition, the avenue of trees would serve as a spectacular entrance to the golf club along the lines of Magnolia Drive, the famous entrance to one of the best known golf courses in the world, Augusta National, home of the US Masters. I see fantastic benefits to the community. an opportunity to showcase from an elevated position the wonderful panoramic views stretching from the Coorong across the bluff and Granite Island. It could become a place for locals and tourists to visit, to enjoy the scenic views and at the same time pay respects to our fallen heroes. We ask the Council to fund and plant 28 native gums 10 metres apart on either side of Pages Road. These gums would grow to a height of 8 metres at either end and no higher than 5 metres in the centre, so we don't obstruct the view to the ocean from the neighbouring residents. The estimated cost for this is $3,000. We, the ratepayers, would provide the funds for a cairn to be built in the centre and a plaque to be attached. The wording on the plaque would be set by the RSL. The Council would provide the stone to be used for the construction of the cairn. A task group assembled by myself would water and maintain the trees for 2 years. By then the gums would be self-supporting. We suggest the official opening would be held on Anzac Day Eve, 24th of April 2022. The RSL have guaranteed a number of World War II diggers, along with buglers and pipers for the event. We are sure a large turnout of service people would also attend. Imagine the exposure Victor Harbour would gain from a group of diggers planting the final tree. I believe this would attract local, state and even national TV and media interest. Looking ahead, and if marketed correctly, this scenic and serene location would attract locals and tourists to spend a quiet moment to reflect on the sacrifices made so that we can enjoy a lifestyle like no other worldwide. The Victor Harbour Golf Club could also gain significantly by promoting the Avenue of Honour, just as the Augusta Golf Club promotes Magnolia Drive as the greatest entrance in golf. I leave you with this final thought. Drive down the Avenue of Honour, pay your respects to the fallen heroes, enjoy the panoramic view, then play the most picturesque first hole in the world at the Victor Harbour Golf Course. I love it. Thank you for allowing me to present this proposal tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Higgins, and what a lovely vision to present to us. It does sound great. Do any of the elected members have any questions for Mr. Higgins? Councillor Littley.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Mr. Higgins. I think it's a wonderful idea to pay respects to our fallen, and we do so at the beginning of each and every meeting, and I'm personally involved in some of those things, paying respects through Barossa Light Horse Association. With the 28 trees, is it a representative of Victor Harbour? Would it be representing Victor Harbour's fallen soldiers? Would it be representing the district's fallen soldiers? We already have a Soldiers Memorial Gardens, which is in a like type thing to as a centre point to celebrate our fallen. Also, even on that stretch of road, there's the Memorial Grove at Back Valley, where there is a stone there in recognition of it, and it is an ageing thing and it isn't looked after, and I understand that as well. Is that the vision to represent the whole district, or is it a select portion that's more centred around Victor Harbour Central, just to get an idea of that vision?
Well, the idea was never to take away from the main memorial. It was really to pay homage to all soldiers served in all wars. Now, the RSL sub-branch may have a different idea, but that would be really their call. But I envisaged on the plaque, we just, so this Avenue of Honour is to represent all those who served in all wars. I'm not looking to take any kudos away from the other memorials.
So the number of 28 trees isn't representative of anything?
No, that's 10 metres apart. There's approximately 140 metres. There's a couple of trees there already we're not going to remove, and then we put a can in the middle, so 28 would be the maximum. It might only be 25 trees.
Any other questions from elected members? Councillor Robertson. Yes, it is. You won't have the opportunity at 12.1 to ask questions of Mr. Higgins. But at 12.1, which we will go to next, you will have the opportunity to debate and to ask any questions to myself.
I think it's briefly. That section of ground which is really
Councillor Robertson, could you put your microphone on, please?
that we could make it a bit more than just the avenue of trees. So in other words, there could be at least one picnic table there to begin with, and a place to pull off the side of the road, because that shoulder is gets a lot of traffic, fast traffic coming around it. I was wondering if you'd thought about extending it beyond the trees.
Good question. We have, but we like to crawl before we can walk. So our first priority was, let's get the Avenue of Honour up, and then when it proves a great success, then we can move to whether you have a barbecue there and whatever to enjoy the spot. Well, that's we weren't going to ask for too much too early.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. We are out of time now. So thank you very much, Mr. Higgins. We appreciate you coming to talk to us. And again, what a beautiful vision. Members, if we can move to item 12.1, which is the proposal in relation to the Avenue of Honour, and you'll find that on page 107 of your agendas. 187, I beg your pardon, of your agendas. I'm of the understanding that the golf course are in negotiations with Jew in relation to that land on the right-hand side, and you may want to add a further recommendation to this recommendation in relating to adjourning the debate until the golf course hear back from Jew in relation to that. But we can take further information from that from the CEO if she has further information. But we'll do the recommendation 1, that council receive and note the proposal. Moving that way, Councillor Littley, and seconding Councillor Schofield. Councillor Littley or Councillor Schofield, do you have any? No. Councillor Kemp?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I will declare a perceived conflict of interest in this matter, as I'm a member of the RSL. And even though it's directly with the Victor Harbour Golf Club, but the RSL is involved and supportive. So I'll declare my perceived conflict of interest, and I'll take the provisions of staying in the chamber, not participating in the discussions and not voting.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. We have a mover and a seconder here. Is there any further discussion on the first recommendation, receiving and noting the proposal only? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The second recommendation, that council support and approve the establishment of an avenue of honour through the planting of trees. Would you moving that way, Councillor Henderson, and seconding Councillor Littley? Do either of you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just to say I think it's an excellent idea and I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Littley?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that, and I think that it's fantastic that we have groups in our community right across, and it does start at the school age, and we see it all the time, actually putting up and putting forward ideas like this to keep honouring our servicemen and women, and I can't see any problem with perhaps my questions to Mr. Higgins earlier might have suggested that I thought we should concentrate on Soldiers Memorial. That's not the case. I think anything that we can do to promote this and keep the stories alive is great, and that golf course area would really benefit as a secondary thing to have a nice avenue there as well, and really dresses up that golf course. We have got a fabulous golf course as well, and to sell it is great.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. I might just ask the CEO to provide members with an update in relation to the golf club's support of this, because one part of the avenues of trees does run along golf club land, and I know that they're discussing with Dew about what to do with that land.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So just to clarify, the actual avenue of trees is in the Council Road Reserve. Obviously, that is the entry to the golf course. The golf course had met with council staff on site originally and was supportive of the matter. However, did request that we hold off on this matter because they have stated they are in negotiations or looking to be in negotiations with Crown Land regarding that parcel of land. We are not privy to those consultations. We're not privy to those negotiations. But obviously the request came directly from Mr Higgins, and it is to do with the Council Road Reserve. But just noting, the golf course did ask us to delay this decision on this matter.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, the road reserve, Pages Road, that is provided in the figure 1, runs all the way along down to what I presume is the end of the road reserve, or is that onto private land after that?
No, that's correct.
Well, it's into the road reserve, and then it does go into private land and the golf course land. But the area that's highlighted in the yellow dotted line is Council Road Reserve.
Yeah, because to me it was one that why would the avenue of trees go in a straight line and across, essentially not across the road, but would go across the road? I would have thought we would have had the avenue of one going down to the actual, at least the brick entrance way to the golf club. Would seem rather strange if you would be planting that avenue all the way down to the end when you not able to be driven on.
Through the Mayor, I don't anticipate the avenue of trees going to the end of that actual section. It would curve and stop at the entry of the golf course. The golf course land, you'll see by the black line, indicates it comes in across that road.
Okay, so it does curve. This avenue does have a bend in it to follow the road. Excellent, great. Yeah, the other question was the trees in there. Is this the box? Sorry, the ironbark trees plus the bottle brushes. There'll be 2 lots of trees in there, or only 1 lot of trees? Because one's more of a bush, so.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So Councillor Robertson, the taller trees would be the majority of the avenue, but the shorter shrubs are around the cairn itself, and so to not obstruct the views of those residences behind. So there'd be shorter bushes so that people could still see the view, and then the avenue, the taller trees either side.
Oh, okay. Well, the view behind, I think, is the quarry, isn't it?
Sorry, through the chair. No, the view looking down to the bay.
Okay. The other one was, at one stage there's been a proposal also to put along that avenue, to move the Porter's memorial cairn, which is been stranded on the western side of the Inman Valley Road, and now inaccessible, to move that down onto that Pages Road area. I was wondering if given that there'd be equipment and stuff going up there to do that work, if we couldn't make and whether that would interfere with the concept of the Avenue of Honour to have that cairn put there.
I'd need to take that on notice. I'm unaware of relocating that cairn and what process would be required, whether we'd even need any sort of heritage approvals to move it or touch it. So I'll take that on notice.
It has been raised before, but probably a while back. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Are there any further questions in relation to recommendation 2? Braden?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, I guess my concern would be, or I think this is an excellent project and I'm fully in support of it. I guess the Victor Harbour Golf Club would be a significant party to this. And I guess if they're asking for a little bit more time to flesh out those negotiations, I think council should appreciate that. Because I guess if they're looking to do something with some adjacent land, or I'm not sure of what those consultations are with respect of.
No, neither do we.
But that might change how that road looks, or it might change what comes out of that road, or whether that road gets an upgrade. And I know, and something I was going to ask around planting these trees is that if this road was upgraded in the future to ensure that the trees are planted sufficiently far away to meet the current regulations and that, because I guess we'd all hate for a situation where trees would have to be pulled up, because that's not what we're wanting to represent here. So I guess looking for, I don't know if variations probably can't go around.
What I'd suggest, if you don't mind, is that if this recommendation is lost, then perhaps to move a motion to adjourn the debate until the golf course hears back from Jew, and they may be able to answer more questions.
Sorry, through the Mayor, you need to, an adjourned debate is actually you're adjourning the debate that's currently on the floor. You wouldn't wait until the motion's lost. So you either adjourn the debate now to seek further information or clarification from the golf club, and then at which case we would bring it back once we had it.
Okay.
But again, we have tried to follow up with the golf club. They were supportive when on site. I'm not sure whether Kathy may be able to add in regards to the separation between the trees. We aren't sure what their pursuit of that Crown land, which has been dedicated for the purposes of scenic views. And if you recall, council's had some discussions with the golf club about that parcel of land previously, but we're unaware of anything further.
Do you have anything to add, Kathy?
Through the Mayor, no, I'm not aware of what the nature of the negotiations is, although I understand one of the considerations was access to that parcel of land. So we're not sure how the trees would impact on that, or whether they'd be able to still get through the 10-metre separation, but we're not really sure what the nature of those negotiations are.
Yeah, I guess that would be my concern of any roads coming off that where a current tree alignment could compensate with the current road, but if there was anything in the future. So I guess, yeah, following the CEO's advice, and I guess based on the information we have, I'd be happy to put up that the motion be adjourned until we receive feedback from the Victor Harbour Golf Club.
Do I have a second for that? Councillor Robertson, there's no debate on adjourning a motion. All those in favour? Sorry, just a moment. All those in favour? And those against? Sorry, Councillor, can we please do that again? Can you put up your hand so that I can see very clearly whether you are for this or against it? So the motion that Councillor Mann put up is until the golf course hear back from Jew. Although
We hear back.
Until we hear back from the golf course. Okay. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. And those against? 2. That is carried. And I'm sure when we hear back from the golf course, we'll be able to progress this, because it sounds as though it's something that all the elected members feel very positively about. But I think as the golf course is a major stakeholder in this, we need to make sure that they're comfortable with where we're going. So thank you very much for that, and I look forward to resuming the debate as soon as we hear back from the golf course. We don't need to do recommendation 3 because that's in line with hearing back from the golf course. So we now move to another deputation we have from Business Victor Harbour. I think we have Kirsten Pittman and Michael Schubert from Business Victor Harbour here. They will be talking about 2 aspects or 2 motions that are coming up. Item 10.1, which is around the Breathe campaign, and item 10.2, which is around our memorandum of understanding with partnership with Business Victor Harbour. You do, and we will then be moving straight to those items so that the 2 of you can go home to your families. Please, can you keep it to 10 minutes again, and that will include questions from the elected members as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Good evening. As mentioned, we just want to have a very short deputation this evening with regards to the Victor Harbour destination brand approval and the collaboration and grant agreement from Business Victor Harbour, which have been previously presented to elected members in informal gatherings. Just to note that the Board of Business Victor Harbour endorses the collaboration and grant agreement that's before Council, and also the destination brand approval, which I'll get Kirsten to talk to as well.
I'm not sure if you want to split this up and speak on one at a time, but we don't actually have any formal information to provide. It's all written in the documentation. We really just provided ourselves here for you to ask us questions regarding it. But I will say that the brand has had a lot of input from the business community and Business Victor Harbour, and we are all very happy with the direction that it's going, and look, we're very excited about launching that very shortly. So there's that. And as far as the agreement's concerned, we have had many line-by-line reviews of the agreement, and we are very happy with where it's at, and that's why it's here to present today.
Do any of the members have any questions for either Kirsten or Michael in relation to item 10.1 or 10.2? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins, and thank you, Michael and Kirsten. The branding and Breeze and all that's great. I think it's a fantastic view, but again, it's all about personal taste and how you see the marketing of that and how it's presented, but I think it's okay. As with your agreement, your 3-year agreement, do you see that as an opportunity to give you 3 years to become self-sustainable, where you don't require any more support from the City of Victor Harbour?
Hopefully, that is certainly the aim. We'd certainly like to be more sustainable than we are. Our membership development and plan that we've put forward at our AGM last week, is that only a week ago? Oh my God. That is the first step into becoming self-sustainable, but the agreement will certainly go a long way to be able to provide employed staff for us to build everything we need in order to make that happen.
Are there any further questions? No? Thank you very much for coming along. It's very nice to be able to have your endorsement on both of those items, which were very much developed as a collaboration with Business Victor Harbour and the council that you have into the work that we're doing for our business community and through our economic development strategy. So thank you both very much for coming. We'll now move to item 10.1, which is on page 114. And if you're happy to, I can do those 4 recommendations on block, unless anybody's got any reservations. No, would someone like to move them on block? Thank you, Councillor Kemp, and seconded by Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to them? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I think this is, again, a breath of fresh air in the sense of revitalising the name of Victor Harbour in a new market platform. with the designs and all the attached statements about why would you come here. Again, as I said before, when we did the deputation, that it is about a personal choice on how you feel about the logo. But personally myself, I see it as an eye catcher. It catches your eye and it sort of may stick with you in your mind about the inverted name of Victor Harbour. But I do support it, and I think it's a great opportunity to revitalise who we are, where we are, and why people want to come here.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Schofield? You don't need to want to say anything. Does anybody have any questions or want to say anything? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Kemp on this is a very clever program. I look forward to it lasting a long time and being able to build on it. I just had one question on page 115 about the brand as an asset owned by the Victor Harbour community. I presume this will be copyrighted. So who will be the owner of the copyright?
City of Victor Harbour.
City of Victor Harbour? Okay.
Are there any further questions? Do the mover or seconder want to say anything further? In that case, then I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Now move on to 10.2, which is the collaboration between the council and the business Victor Harbour. And once again, if you're happy with that, I'll do that recommendation on block. Victoria or Justicia will just highlight a couple of changes. And okay, sure. Before we start, Victoria will highlight a couple of changes. You would have got this on your table.
Yeah, just for members' benefit, just to highlight, while the first two are very just minor amendments, obviously, as Kirsten highlighted, we've been going through this line by line, and so has Business Victor Harbour. And they also picked up there was a probably incorrect amount. It's not 500 million liability insurance, it's 5 million, but also noting that Business Victor Harbour already has a $10 million liability. So we just wanted to correct the document accordingly.
We'll go through the recommendation one by one, the first one being that council receive and note the report. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the report? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Recommendation 2, I'll take that you've read that. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Schofield, thank you. And Councillor Littley seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to recommendation 2? Councillor Littley? Does anybody want to speak to recommendation 2? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. And recommendation 3 is authorising the CEO to sign the agreement. So moving that way, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I think this is a great milestone in the history of the City of Victor Harbour, where it comes together with the business community, the business of commerce, to have an agreement to support and vitalise our town's business community and surrounds. And I think it's a great effort, from all parties to come together to have this agreement put in place for our future. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp. Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree that this is very good. It's a three-year program, which is good. It gives some certainty to the processes that we're involved in terms of building a really strong Chamber of Commerce. Just a couple of very minor things. On page 150 in on the agenda here, I noticed that in the agreement we've got in section 1.1.4, we've got the Grana Party. What is that?
1.1.
0.4, almost at the bottom. Staff means any person or persons employed or engaged by the Grana Party. I don't know what that is.
I'm not quite sure what that is, Councillor Robertson. Good pickup. Mark, is Mark Brisabilla here?
Anyway, I think, I don't know why it needs.
Thank you. Look, we'll follow that up, Councillor Robertson, and fix that up if that is a typo. And get back to you. But I don't think that should detract from the actual recommendation. But thank you.
But it needs to be corrected.
It needs to be corrected.
On page one, over the page on 151, 2.8 near the top, it says 2.8 is a matter of interpretation, saying that the background is correct. I'm wondering why that is there, why it needs to be there.
It's on page 151. And it's the 2.8, the background is correct. That's part of the interpretation context, Councillor Robertson, so I presume that it's referring to the context of the background actually being correct within that.
It's referring to the background at the beginning of the document on page 148.
Yeah. So I mean, but isn't that obvious? I don't know. To me, it is. Then turning to the back of this into the sorry, does it need to be there, CEO?
Well,
Drawn up by.
It's been drawn up by various lawyers, yes, and I'm getting a nod from Tim up the back of the room. He's going, yes, it does need to be there.
Okay. Coming to the issue of the schedule, which is about the project. This is the sort of work or the output combined outputs of the business Victor Harbor and the council. There's one in here that on top of page 162, which says that the board executive and senior staff, that's of Business Victor Harbor, shall undergo governance training for not-for-profit associations and to maintain governance knowledge relevant to the business of Victor Harbor. This has obviously gone in because the council is concerned about the governance of Business Victor Harbor, but to me, it looks like a highly unusual sort of demand to be made there. And then in fact, on page 164, it in terms of the commitments reporting requirements of the Business Victor Harbor is that evidence of governance training undertaken by the board executive and senior staff. I mean, what are our concerns here with this?
This is ratepayers' money that we are providing to an association in Victor Harbor, and therefore any money from ratepayers that we provide to any association, whether it be a sporting club or whether it be Business Victor Harbor or another club, we have to make sure that that money is used wisely and that money is used with the principles of good governance. And just as elected members, we have governance training, various types of governance training when we come in as elected members representing our community, because we are dealing with ratepayers' money. So do any organisations that we provide money to.
Well, that's a nice speech, Mayor, but I'm just wondering.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Robertson, please don't
why
be
it is that it's
derogatory.
necessary to be there, because we don't do this to other organisations.
We do, and I'll let the CEO finish for me, Councillor Robertson.
Councillor Robertson, just in regards to the schedule, so the project specifies the ability for Business Victor Harbour to have the flexibility to utilise these funds that council's providing for a variety of reasons. One of the main of those is actually to empower and give strength to Business Victor Harbour to become a well-strong organisation. One of those elements, and it's a measurement, so it's not a demand of council upon Business Victor Harbour, we've made that very clear, but a measurement would be that they are undertaking ongoing governance and development and training as a board, but also providing that to other organisations within the community. So it's a fair and reasonable measurement for council to have within the agreement. Again, both parties have actually been through this. The whole idea of this funding is actually to support Business Victor Harbour becoming a strong chamber of commerce, and good governance is a really key component of that.
I appreciate that through the Mayor CEO, but a lot of effort has been made by Business Victor Harbour over the last year or two to make significant arrangements for better governance within the organisation. And to me, this kind of demand in here, because it's a KPI for them, it's a reporting
It's a
requirement.
measurement. Again, it's not a demand, but also you need to appreciate, Councillor Robertson, Business Victor Harbour will change its membership annually. And again, this funding agreement is for a 3-year agreement. Again, it gives longevity to Business Victor Harbour to establish itself strongly. It gives confidence to the council as an ongoing financial commitment, but their business organisation will change in its membership, and this is to ensure that it continues with that development and strength, regardless of who's sitting in that executive or as a chair. Currently, this membership is strong. They do have a strong commitment, but that will change. So this agreement documents the ability of council to continue that measurement with whoever sits within the office.
So at the last AGM, they had 2 new members on the Business Victor Harbour board. Those 2 new members will need to have governance training, will need to understand how the board works and how to do things in the right way. And this was gone through line by line with Business Victor Harbour, and they are very happy with everything that is in here.
I just think we have some double standards going on here, but never mind.
I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson, when you talk about, please.
Yeah, you might be sorry, Mayor, about it.
No,
Can I please move that we put the vote?
thank you, Councillor Littling. We've got a formal motion to put the vote. Does somebody second that? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. So we will put the recommendation. So all those in favour of recommendation 3? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. And once again, congratulations to Business Victor Harbour. I think that this is a big milestone for the council and for you working together. And I think that we can do great things going to the future to support our business community and our community as a whole. So, and it's been a pleasure working with you over the last few months to get this memorandum of understanding up to speed. It's been great. So thank you very much. We now move back to, we have one more deputation, and that is Steve Rogers from Little Athletics. Steve, are you here? You are. If you'd like to come to the front, please. And I understand that you've also provided a handout to elected members titled Athletic Facility for the Fleurieu Peninsula, and it'll be great to be able to read that. You have 10 minutes, Mr. Rogers, and that 10 minutes will also include question time. So please, Councillor Robertson, can you turn off your microphone now, please?
Mayor Jenkins, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity to address Council. The South Coast Athletics Centre is a reasonably progressive non-for-profit organisation that continues to provide quality athletics and experiences for children between 3 and 17. We draw membership from pretty much the whole of the Fleurieu. In fact, Mount Compass, we have members from Maiponga and Yank and even Currency Creek. So it's the only athletics club on the Fleurieu Peninsula. Over the last 5 years, COVID's made a bit of a mess of some organisations, but we have managed to maintain our membership level. In fact, we've actually grown it. We currently have 126 children or people entered, and about 55% of them are young females. So we have a lot of women who can participate in the program. One of the cutest things you'll ever see is the Tiny Tots program, where little 3 and 4 year olds are encouraged to run and jump and be involved with athletics. It's a fantastic thing to see. One of the cutest things I've ever seen, actually. There are very few programs or other types of sporting programs which cater for such young people. The organisation has managed to survive financially over the years. We don't have a bar to sell alcohol, and we don't have a surf lifesaving club sort of facility which leases out a professional kitchen to the public. So we managed to scrape together enough funds every year to keep on improving the equipment. We're in our 40th year. We were formed at the Victor Harbor High School in 1981. And then, of course, when the primary school relocated to its current R7 venue along the river, the athletics club followed and have been using that facility with the cooperation of the Education Department ever since. So this is our 40th anniversary, and yes, we will be having some sort of party. It's an interesting organisation, one of the few that I'm involved, or unusual, in that the whole family are involved in it. The parents and family run the organisation. There's a range of track and field, and that includes long jump, high jump, running in hurdles, and the variety of throwing. And so the family run the organisation and are fully qualified, and so we have no paid coaches. We're all volunteers. The organisation offers young people a weekly competition on a Friday night starting mid-October and ending in mid-March the following year. SALA, which is the state body, run competitions and carnivals at Mile End, and we have a lot of athletes from the Fleurieu who do very, very well on a state basis. It's been, in fact, we would have sent people to national competitions if COVID hadn't closed down the carnivals. We also have a free weekly training session on a Wednesday night at the same venue, and that's to help or encourage people to improve their technique, running or throwing, and that's supplied by once again the members and the volunteers who have over the years gained in-house qualifications. We have now moved into the adult side of the competition, or athletics, and we have one athlete, or one parent in particular, who is medaling regularly on a state basis in Adelaide and was formerly a member of the club many years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you'd have to say the current facilities are somewhat primitive. We run out of a tin shed, and we grow the best redback spiders that I have ever seen in this shed. It's quite extraordinary where they all come from. The oval's reasonably uneven. During the winter, the oval is too wet to use. And in recent years, we've even had members or athletes that have been injured on the uneven surface. This limits our ability to produce fast times and get them to qualify for state championships, which is the long-term aim. We have a number of athletes and young people who have disabilities. One of the few sports which caters for people with physical or mental disabilities. And we have seen several of these young people over the years develop substantially and become better people. Ladies and gentlemen, we are, as an organisation, we're asking for consideration in improving the facilities in track and field in this region. It's not only going to benefit the club, and a number of our athletes are involved with other sports. We all know the problems with childhood obesity, but all the schools gain from our participation or our running the program. And it's interesting, ladies and gentlemen, that the Fleurieu Peninsula has never run a state or Australian Masters Games, and that's due to pretty much to the lack of proper facilities. So the Masters Games pretty often go to the Clare Valley. On a national basis, they even managed to run the facilities at Alice Springs, yet the Fleurieu
You
hasn't.
have 3 minutes left, Mr. Rogers, with question time.
Okay, well, I will draw it up then. So, Australian Masters Games attracts between 5 and 10,000 people over a period of 10 days. I invite councillors to have a look at the new athletics facility at Bridgestone Athletics Centre, which has just been commissioned at Salisbury, and hopefully council will look favourably upon our organisation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. And yes, I've certainly been down to your facilities, and I know that as an elected body, when we've been discussing our new sporting precinct, we have very much reflected on your needs down there. Councillor Henderson, you've got a question for Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And first of all, I'd like to say it is an amazing organisation. I have been involved with Little Athletics in the past, taking grandchildren along to a venue in the hills, and it's well worth supporting. My question is, are you aware that council has actually been having discussions around improving sporting and particularly athletics facilities in our region?
Yes, I have. I've seen 2 proposals. I would have to say that the consultation with the club hasn't been as good as I would have liked, or we would have liked. So there's been a proposal at the Gillespie lands. There's been a proposal at the Victor Harbour Oval. In fact, we were supposed to already be at the Victor Harbour Oval, but the actual physical consultation with our club hasn't met with our requirements.
Thank you. We'll keep that in mind and make sure that when we do have further consultation that we directly consult with your club. I think that's really important. Councillor Robertson and then Councillor Littley.
Yes. Steve, is the R7 Oval, is that the best place for athletics, development of athletics facilities in Victor Harbour?
The R7 Oval doesn't cost the athletics club any money. So it's a very, as far as the club goes, it's a very cheap location. There are problems with the watering and the quality of the oval. We need a facility about 100 or 200 metres long and 100 metres wide. So generally speaking, football ovals aren't big enough. So I'd have to say that in the interim, the R7 Oval has the most potential.
Thank you. Councillor Littley?
My question is a little bit similar. I see reading in the notice, and I've been involved in Little Athletics since its inception in 1981, and also had a good insight into the Masters Games as being on the steering committee in Alice Springs. You talk about growth in here. It's not big enough at that R7 Oval to grow. Is that a realistic thing with the numbers that we've got? Or are we talking about growth of competition like the Masters Games and that to be able to host?
Yeah, the facility is probably big and physically big enough, but the Australian Masters Games, as somebody who's competed and also on a state basis, it's a fantastic organisation for old people like myself who can still compete. So the growth is in attracting state competitions to the Fleurieu and potentially even more people who wish to be involved with the sport.
Thank you, Mr Higgins. We have run out of time. I'll take one more question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins.
Make it quick, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and I very much appreciate the frustrations of the community group, like many others, in the delays around the facilities and the sporting precinct. I guess my question in sort of looking at, let's move on in that next step, looking at, I guess from the club's view, would it be to be a part of a future facility in that potentially medium to long term, but also have upgrades to the current facility in that short term period?
Thank you for the question. I guess upgrades to the current facility would be the cheapest option. There was a proposal to cover the oval in 300 millimetres of soil, which would take 7,000 cubic metres of soil, which would keep a trucking company busy for a fair period of time. That's possibly not what we would be looking at. It was an expensive proposition. The oval wouldn't be able to be used for a number of years until it stabilised. And so the R7 Oval basically wouldn't have a school oval. The club has a number of strategies which we think would improve the facility, unless of course council or the Fleurieu were to provide something elsewhere, which has been suggested.
Thank you very much.
And on behalf of the club, thank you very much to the elected members and the mayor for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Our pleasure. We don't have any questions from the gallery, and there are no petitions. So we now move on to item 9.1, which is outstanding resolutions. The recommendation is that council receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And second, have either of you got any questions or comments about the report? Are there any questions from members? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just a couple. On page 10, second bottom line here, oh, sorry, I did get had an email from the CEO this afternoon, which answered that question. Sorry, page 12, the UNTARS one there, it's noted as completed there. Has the lease document been signed and formally issued?
Yes, it has. It wouldn't be marked completed if it hadn't.
Then page 17. I don't know, this is a confidential item, but I'm just wondering if that precludes a question on it?
Depends.
Okay. Is there any update on what's happening in relation to on the use of this car park land?
Well, it's actually not confidential in terms of council has released its confidential item in terms of it is open and willing and able to partner with the Anchorage if and when it's ready, when they are ready. Council has continued to progress the designs for a partial site car park on the southern end of McKinley Street car park that was presented to members at the CASPAC meeting. That is in the agenda workshop. Yeah, so we haven't heard anything back from the Anchorage, if that's your question.
Are there any further questions? If not, I'll put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Nine point two is the Deputy Mayor appointment. And the first recommendation is that Council receive and note the Deputy Mayor appointment report. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Schofield, moving that way, and do I have a seconder for receiving and noting the report? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Either of you have any questions or comments? Anybody have any questions or comments? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. So I will call, if more than one member nominates for the position, a suspension in meeting procedures so that we can seek nominations and vote. I am aware that Councillor Hales has nominated in writing to myself and the CEO that he would like to stand. The CEO will read his nomination speech as he's not here to provide that himself. If anyone else nominates for the position, there will be 3 minutes for that person or those people to explain why they feel that they're the most appropriate nominee, and then we will appoint the returning officer. Can I ask if there are any nominations from the floor? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'll nominate myself to run for the position of Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? No, so we have 2 nominations. That is Councillor Hales and Councillor Kemp. Councillor Kemp, would you like to have 3 minutes to speak to your nomination?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. In the last 3 years of the term of this council, I believe I have demonstrated my ability to work for the community in a fashion which supports the community, and the Chamber is aware of this, and through my emails and constantly raising issues, constantly looking at solutions, what's better for the community as a whole, and I believe the community understands my position and my commitment to that, and I'll take that work ethic into the role of Deputy Mayor to support the Mayor in the role that she undertakes at any time she needs someone as Deputy Mayor to step in. So I believe that my work ethic and what I've demonstrated so far in this term of council is good enough to be supported by my peers to support me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I'll ask the CEO to read Councillor Hales' nomination speech.
Thank you. It says, "Dear fellow elected members, I write to you today to seek your support to appoint me as Deputy Mayor at the 25th of October Council meeting. I will be absent from our monthly meeting as I will be on school camp, so please accept this as my nomination for item 9.2. We have now spent almost 3 years together in this term of council, and I believe we are travelling well as a group. As individuals and collectively, we are all seeking to serve our community in a manner we believe is best. While this at times leads us to disagree, we have shown an ability to return to the table and move past these difficulties, which is not an easy feat. This is to the net benefit of our community. Regardless of whether you support me or not for this position, these things remain true. I believe that over the last 3 years, I have demonstrated to you through my chairing of CASPAC that I am up to the task of Deputy Mayor. I have shown a sound understanding of policies and procedures within which we operate and how they are applied. I've always conducted meetings in a way that is fair and balanced, allowing all members to add to our deliberations within reason. As well as these, I have also always worked with staff on both before and after to seek the best possible outcomes for elected members from these meetings. These skills are required to fulfil the main purpose of Deputy Mayor position, which is that of chairing meetings in the Mayor's absence. An example of this was clearly displayed recently when you chose me unopposed to chair a particularly difficult section of our August Council meeting. Historically, I also served in this position 2 years, for 2 years on the last term of Council. During this time, even served as acting Mayor while the incumbent was in a period of leave. I understand your need as elected members to think about this and vote in a way that best reflects your beliefs and values. There will be no offence if you vote for someone else and even seek this position yourself. This is the nature of politics. Thank you for your consideration of my nomination. Regards, Councillor Nick Hales.
Thank you. I'll call for a suspension of meeting procedures and hand over to the Chief Executive Officer as returning officer. Do I need a nomination for? Yeah, I need a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconded by Councillor Henderson. All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. I'll hand over to you, Victoria.
Thank you. Members, in accordance with our meeting procedures, we will shortly provide you with a ballot paper. We are after one preferred candidate. The two nominations are Councillor David Kemp and Councillor Nick Hales for the position of Deputy Mayor for a term of 1 year. If you can clearly mark your preferred candidate on the ballot paper and return it. Thank you. With a total of 5 votes, Councillor Hales is a preferred candidate.
Now go back into meeting procedures and recommendation 3 is that in accordance with section 51(4) of the Local Government Act, the Council appoints Councillor Hales to the position of Deputy Mayor from a period commencing on the 23rd of November and concluding November 2022. Moving that way, Councillor Schofield. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Robertson, did you vote? No. Can I just please ask everybody that when they are voting, it is very difficult for me up here, if you wave your arms around or if you don't vote or if you don't put your hands up. I need it to be very clear. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. That is carried. And I'll take this time then to say thank you very much to Councillor Schofield, who is our current Deputy Mayor, for the support that she has given me in deputising and supporting me over the last year. It's been very, very appreciated. Thank you very much, Carol. We now move on to item 9.3, the Renewable Energy Advisory Group, Council Member Appointments. I'll do this in block. So I beg your pardon, we've got the first two recommendations that we receive and note the report. And the second one is that Council endorse the extension of Councillor Henderson as Chair and Councillor Robertson as Council Member to the group. Councillor Littley did not want to renominate, so the group can continue with 2 members, but if any more members want, then we can nominate another member. So if we just go with those first 2 recommendations first, someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Robertson, and seconding Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? Does any of the elected members want to nominate for this group? We can do it with 2, but if there are if others want to nominate, then that would be great, because it is a very important group. No, if there are no nominations, that will stay open. If anybody has any second thoughts and wants to nominate, please come and talk to either myself or the CEO, and we can look at getting you on the group. And thank you very much to Marilyn Henderson and Councillor Robertson for continuing with that. We now move to 9.4, which is 2021 Local Government Association Conference and Annual General Meeting, which is next week, this Thursday, Friday. And I'll do the first recommendation is that we receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding Councillor Glasbrook. No, Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Now, I wonder how we do this in terms of the second recommendation is that Council endorse the voting recommendations related to the Australian Regional Organisational Committee, or the SAROC and GAROC, and the Local Government Board of Directions. Can I just go through and I'll just get a hands up about whether or not you recommend, whether you endorse those recommendations from 7.1 to 9.1, and if you don't, then we can discuss them. So can I just, recommendation 7.1, does anybody have any trouble or any problems with that recommendation? You have trouble with that, Councillor Robertson?
The City of Victor Harbor comments, I thought that was good. Not supporting that, but the second one, trying to increase South Australia's influence. I just had a question there for the CEO. I remember some months ago asking her about putting forward a recommendation for a motion at the conference, and she said, like, this was about 2 or 3 months ago, And Victoria said, "Oh, it's too late." And I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. Is that part of the reason? This is sort of shooting ourselves in the foot that you have to
Because
be.
they need to go through SAROC and GAROC first. So these recommendations have gone through these first 7.1 through SAROC committee. So they go from us to SAROC.
Mayor, I understand that.
Well, that's the question that you're asking the CEO. It was too late because it hadn't gone through SAROC.
No, it wasn't the question. Question was quite different, Mayor. Question was, is the fact that South Australia feels that they're not having a big enough influence at the National General Assembly, is that in part because we cut off our own potential to have motions to put forward to that because it's required to have them in so early?
No, well, it's not only because of that. Other LGAs from each of the states have a similar process. They have GAROCs and SAROCs for their regional group of councils and go through a similar process where any motions or proposed motions to ALGA must come via the LGA. So that's not the main reason. We just don't tend to have as many motions coming through to ALGA. But each of the states have a similar process to what we do here in South Australia, so through the LGA. So councils can't give motions directly to ALGA. They must come via the LGA. And again, they take that same process, which the Mayor was just outlining, through their either metropolitan or regional associations.
I had another question on top of page 33. I think City of Victor Harbour's comments, this is about the availability of social and community housing. They refer there in the middle to the instability in the rental housing market. Was that what we wanted to say? Is it the instability or is it the rising prices?
Well, I say instability being there isn't many places available. They're not always available. So it's instability. We haven't got a regular market for housing in the regions, particularly our region, because most of our holiday homes, we would love many of our holiday homes to be converted to actually residential. So instability meaning it's not always available. There isn't many rentals available down here.
Yeah, that's been a problem forever for some reason. Just a couple of other, on page 34, in the CVH comments at the second to bottom one there, this is a typo, I think, because it doesn't relate to that, it relates to the one above it, but somehow it's been put in there.
Yeah, you are correct, because that's to do with the telecommunication pit, so I can find out where it should be.
And yeah, and then the other one about the homeless, I mean, this is important stuff. What we're supporting here is the notion that we call upon the Australian government, together with the states and territories, to commit to a national plan to end homelessness by 2030. Which to me is an absolutely impossible target. I mean, South Australia has been banging away at trying to provide adequate social and community housing for the last 3 or 4 decades, and it hasn't shifted off 10,000 families waiting for housing. It goes down in any 1 year, it goes down by a few hundred. So we're supporting that. I appreciate the effort in trying to get that done, but I mean, impossible targets seem to me to be, if it said halve it by 2030, but to eliminate it, to me is impossible.
Does anybody else have any questions in relation to 7.1, 7.2? If we go to the Garrock committee reports from 8.1 to 8.5, are there any questions in relation to any of those recommended reports? And then recommendation reports from the LGA Board of Directors. Any questions in relation to that? So we'll go to recommendation 2. And would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconded by Councillor Henderson. Thank you very much. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The third recommendation is that Council endorse myself to attend the 2021 Local Government Association Conference to be held this Thursday and Friday. So I'd like to thank you very much, Councillor Littley and Councillor Mann. Have you got any questions about that? No. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Kemp.
This is not personal, Mayor Jenkins, but I don't see the benefit of any elected member attending these conferences. I see the value adding by staff attending. They're here for the longer haul in longevity, in actually meeting, networking, sharing ideas. But as elected members, I don't see anything comes back out of these conferences or networking. I haven't seen no evidence of all the elected members that attended anything to date in the last 3 years. Hasn't really done, I've seen. They've written some reports, but I haven't actually seen anything value come out of it in that context. So it's not about positions or people. It's about, I don't believe elected members should attend. I think staff should attend these types of benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Just letting you know, I'm actually on the SAROC committee as Deputy Chair and on the Local Government Hills and Fleurieu, the Local Government Hills and Fleurieu as Deputy Chair and on the SAROC committee. And some of those recommendations have flowed through that way. That is the Local Government Association Conference and Annual General Meeting. The voting parties are mainly the elected body, the elected mayors, and I would encourage, if any of you wanted to come, I would encourage you to come, not just for the networking, which I think is very important, but also to have a better understanding of what happens at local government at high levels away from council. It's certainly opened my eyes to what local government does and the influence that the LGA has on state and federal politics and policies. So any of you want to come, then please sing out. I'm more than happy to help facilitate that. Are there any other queries or questions? Councillor Robertson?
Yeah, a question for you, Mayor Jenkins. What you might be able to inform the conference, if you get the chance, that because the theme of this is, do we plan for the future we can see, or what we want? And I thought, well, that's an interesting statement, but you might be able to, maybe you'd be able to inform the council about what we've been doing recently, which is looking over the horizon to build resilience by anticipating conditions, and that might be something that might be useful to some of the councils.
Certainly, if the opportunity arises, that's something that I'm more than happy to do, Councillor Robertson. So, are there any other questions in relation to item 3? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour and those against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.5, the Statutes Amendment Local Government Review Act. And the first recommendation is that Council receive and note the report. Someone move that way. Thank you, Councillor Kemp, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The second recommendation, the council endorse the reviewed council member allowance and benefits policy as provided at attachment B and revoke the member's legal advice procedure as provided at attachment C. You moving that way, Councillor Kemp? And do I have a second to Councillor Henderson? Either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
I'd like to move an alternative motion for 2.2. The council develop a draft procedure and be presented back to council for consideration. The reason why I've changed that to remove revoke, I understand under the reform bill that section 78 of the Act is now repealed. That elected members won't have that ability to do seek legal opinion and undertaking their duties, but the councils can, if they want to, have that position in place, or that procedure in place that elected members can actually seek legal opinions. And I think that's a good, open, honest way of how council should develop and run, where elected members have this opportunity. The number of times elected member that may use it is very little, but there is that opportunity. I think we should give ourselves that opportunity if required. I did seek a legal opinion through the CEO on 2 items. I've left it to the CEO to distribute it to the chamber. That hasn't happened to date, and I forgot all about it until this item came up. So I suppose it's up to the CEO if she wants to, or in discussions to release those legal opinions on 2 items which I sought information on. I think, when we look at this, as I said before, it's about opportunities, it's about open and honest that, elected members have that opportunity. And I think if we don't, we are being discrediting ourselves and not having the right to seek a legal opinion on what we do in this chamber on behalf of the community. Thank you.
If I may, through the Mayor, can I just clarify? So just your alterations to that recommendation, noting that when you move it, you can move with your alteration because it's your motion. You don't have to just put what the council has and then bury it afterwards. But I'm just suggesting, would it be that 0.22B that you revoke that provision from the procedure and the administration bring back a revised provision or as you've read, because we still need to revoke it and then bring something back.
I thank for the technicalities there as CEO, but I thought, because it hasn't been passed yet, that my alternative motion would have revoked it anyway. But that's fine. I accept what you say, and if we write that way, I'll be okay with that.
You seconded that motion. Are you happy to second the motion with those amendments?
No, I was happy with the original.
Victoria might just clarify for members' benefit.
Just in terms of further explaining, we do outline in the report that while section 78A, I think it's A, has been revoked, council does have, and we actually explain that council can have a provision in its policy where it still does provide a benefit or an allowance to elected members to seek legal advice. So we were recommending that we can do exactly as Councillor Kemp is proposing. However, we did seek clarification because I had a thought that this would obviously be looked into further by members. Seeking of that legal advice is specifically for members in their roles and responsibilities. For example, if members are, there's a code of conduct matter or someone's challenging what your role may be as an elected member within the community, you can seek that legal advice, but it's not specifically to challenge the organisation or challenge the chamber. That's not the intent of it. And again, I think that can be fleshed out when we undertake this further provision for members to consider.
So, Councillor Henderson, are you saying you're withdrawing your seconding of this motion?
No, I'll still second it.
Still second it, okay. Would you like to speak to it? Does anybody else want to speak to it? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. Yes, it was carried unanimously. The third recommendation is that council revoke the informal gathering policy and note the information briefing session administrative procedure as provided on attachment E. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you very much. That's carried. Can I just ask that we share the moving and seconding of motions around? It seems that we've got the same people doing that most of the time, and I think that it's important that unless you really don't want to because of a particular motion, that we all contribute to the meeting. We now moved, oh sorry, I beg your pardon. Item 4, that council endorse the reviewed code of practice meeting for meeting procedures as provided under separate cover, and the amendments shall take place as from the 10th of November. Moving that way, Councillor Littley, thank you very much. And seconding, Councillor Robertson, thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson? Anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Glasbrook.
Just ask a question if I could. I just clarify, it says there that members will be able to contribute or attend council meetings via electronic means. So that is going to be the case?
So members can attend committee meetings or information briefings by electronic means, but not council meetings. You can still, under current emergency provisions, they are still in place, so you can, if we had a council meeting now, but when the emergency provisions lapse, we cannot hold council meetings by electronic means.
Oh, thank you. I must have misread that. So that was a recommendation that went to, was it the LGA? That's continued, has it?
Correct.
Yeah.
So this council put forward a motion to the LGA's AGM last time. That was supported. Obviously that was put to the government as part of their reforms. They didn't incorporate that, but that doesn't mean it still hasn't or isn't going to be pursued. It's something that could be regulated later, but it hasn't been incorporated into the Reform Act.
So is there any way that we can represent that? Or is there any point in representing that? Because I think we've got the technology nowadays. I think it's silly that if someone's away or unwell, for example, that they can't contribute to a council meeting electronically.
I can pursue with the LGA as to why the government didn't pursue it further. My understanding, and it's only anecdotal, is that it's similar to Parliament. They won't hold Parliament by way of electronic means. People must be present. They believe that the council meetings are the same. And in a case of an emergency, they did put those provisions in place for councils to still operate and function. I can ask for some sort of confirmation as to why the government didn't support them, and if we need to, then we would look to follow up further. But my understanding is the LGA is still pursuing it because they did support our motion that went to their AGM.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Are there any further questions? In that case, then we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you, unanimously. We now move to 9.6, the budget schedules and parameters. I'll do that recommendation on block unless anybody's got any queries. You would rather I did it one by one, Councillor Kemp?
Yes, Mayor Jenkins, I'd like to move some amendments to some of the 2 recommendations.
Okay, so the first recommendation is that council receive and note the schedule and parameters report. Moved by Councillor Kemp, seconded by Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to receiving and noting that? Does anybody have any questions or want to speak to that? All of those in favour? Those against? Thank you very much. That's carried. The second recommendation that council endorse the parameters as set out in the report development of the 2022-23 budget. Councillor Kemp, moving that way. You said you had some amendments.
Yes, since I'm moving it as a variation, I just want to change one word from the council notes. The parameters are set out in this report for the development of the 22-23 budget. We replace endorse with notes.
Okay.
The reason why I've put down noting, I think sometimes we can lock ourselves in if we start endorsing parameters, which means they're not flexible, they can't be moved because you endorsed it, they're set with these figures and operating activities and capital budgets, and that, you know, it's a moving feast in the sense that, you know, things may change up and down over the next 6 months, how we develop the budget. And so I just feel that personally, I just feel that we're locking ourselves in. We endorse the parameters. I think that they may come in and out, and I think we just need to be that more flexible and not personally lock ourselves in using terms like, you know, endorse the parameters.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I agree with those that comment, particularly in relation to the year 2 and 3 plans. But yeah, I do support that.
Thank you. Are there, Kelly, do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, if I can, through the Mayor, just wanted to add just a bit of clarification. No issues with changing the wording within there. The reason we were putting forward the parameters was basically to give staff a bit of a starting point to develop the initial budget to come to council. So we weren't trying to lock council into a position that it couldn't change and flex during the whole budget process, but just to give us a bit of a direction in terms of where to start. But happy with the notes as well as the endorse, that's fine.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any, Councillor Glassbrook?
I'd just like to ask another question of our Manager of Finance, and thank you for that clarification, because that was one of my questions, as why we haven't done this before, so I was curious as to why. The other thing I wonder is why we would be looking to, I know we're not setting this in stone, but why we would be looking at a deficit. Surely we should at least attempt from the beginning to start with a balanced budget.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, ultimately that would be fantastic. I guess some of the challenges we've had over the last couple of years, including COVID-19 and the restrictions, shortage of materials and supplies and contractors, may make that difficult this year. But Council has just endorsed the long-term financial plan that basically said this is the forecast going on the assumptions that were adopted and the key financial indicators that were adopted by Council as the way to get back to a surplus in future years. So starting as a base point, we're looking at what the long-term financial plan has. Effectively, if we can come in at a position better than that, we would certainly be presenting that to Council. But what we're saying is this is what we need to work within for the very preliminary initial budget that we'll bring to Council for discussion.
Oh, thank you. I do have another question, and just a comment about that last question is that the target there is -3, so obviously we're outside of our target range as well. So I believe that we should at least again attempt to be within our target. My other question is the net lending. You've got 537,000 there. Is that just to do with operating, or is that's not the total borrowing?
Through the Mayor, so the uniform presentation of finances, which is basically what this sort of table looks like, provides a very, very high level of essentially the shortfall in cash that Council would incur if at one point in time everything happened. So what it's basically saying is if everything was purchased and paid for at the same time, we'd be $500,000 short, and that would be the borrowing requirements for both capital and operating. As we know, that fluctuates for Council during the year, and we maintain our cash flow through the use of CADs and minimising interest as we go through. But just in terms of the percentages and the key financial indicators, the point for putting the report up was essentially to seek Council's appetite for how it wanted its budget developed in the initial stages. So happy for that to be varied. It just gives us a bit of a point to start with,
so that we're heading in the same direction that council is when we put it together without having to make too many changes to the very first initial version. So we're all on the same page.
Now, just to continue on from that, next question is really then, if we're only looking at borrowing, $500,000 odd, our net financial liabilities ratio is nowhere near 75% at the moment. Why would it then be 75%?
So this is, again, through the Mayor, this is based on the forecast in the long-term financial plan that was adopted, which doesn't take into account the changes that have occurred since the end of financial year has been processed. So we know that council recently endorsed an additional loan of $5 million, as well as one earlier in the year for another CAD that was about 3.5. So what we're basically saying is the amount of loans we will need to take out in this year will increase our net financial liabilities by the 30th of June to that 75% mark. So at the moment, at the end of 30 June, off the top of my head, if I can remember correctly, we're sitting around the 45, 50% for net financial liabilities. But once we've added on that $5 million loan and potentially drawn down some more on our CADs with significant projects early next year, we're saying we will be sitting around the 75% mark. So it's looking at the position at the end of the financial year for next year.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. So that makes me immediately think that puts us in a very poor situation in relation to an 80% ratio when you consider the projects that we've got in the long-term plan.
Again, through the Mayor, so the long-term financial plan shows that we do peak up at that 80%, and I think it's around year 6 that it starts to drop off again. So the long-term financial plan was put together to try and keep that at a cap, keep it below the 80%. And as we then start to pay and the significant capital projects reduce in volume, we drop off it from that. I think it's around year 6 that we start going back towards somewhere more healthier with a bit more of a gap below council's top limit. But yes, years 2, 3, 4 and essentially year 5 are sitting around that high 70s mark.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Are there any further questions? Councillor Robertson, you seconded the debate. If this is a question rather than continuation of the debate, I'll take a question. Thank you. I'll put that to the floor then. Or Councillor Kemp. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Did you close the debate? Oh, I can't see Councillor Mann. Councillor Councillor Robson did second it. I've written down Councillor Littley opening it, that's why. Councillor Mann, you had a question.
Comment instead, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I appreciate some of the views and concerns around the chamber. I think we just have to try and appreciate the process we've been through to get to this point and this little snapshot that it provides. I think this is the administration responding to exactly what we've been telling the administration in terms of our long-term financial plan, what our ratios are. This is entirely created by this chamber. We went through that process of going back to that long-term financial plan. We had that workshop. We all pitched our changes. I put forward for trying to save a few $1 million in that. That wasn't really supported, cutting back all that across the 10 years. Instead, we just deferred one project by 1 year and then supported that. I think that when it comes to this budget, we've been through this process, and to keep coming around in circle with certain comments, I don't think it's productive. And I think that elected members are forgetting about the journey and their decisions and the decisions of the chamber. And I just want to make it clear that this isn't administration putting something on the chamber that we're not supportive of or that we don't agree with. This is them just trying to present us with budgets and present us with exactly what we've asked for.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Well said. Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins, and I do thank the Manager of Finance, Kelly, for providing no resistance to the change to the motion, because I think I wasn't complaining or changing the parameters. I think it's a great concept to put this out early to give us an idea to work through and also to refer it back to the long-term financial plan. But in my mind, the long-term financial plan is only a guideline. It can change depending on what happens, and things do change, things do happen. We need to have the conversations. Sometimes we need to continue to have the conversation, even though we may be going over and be rhetoric over old ground, but sometimes you need to be doing that to look at how we progress to the future. So I think it's great work done by the Manager of Finance to put this, these parameters out there to give us a guide and look at it, and certainly will evoke more discussions about it because, you know, off the top, you know, it's sort of going, wow, you know, how can we improve on it? How can we make it better? What can we do? So I think over the next 6 months, I think there's going to be interesting conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I'll now put this to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Thank you. I'll take as read. Does someone want to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and seconded by. Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to it? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Again, endorse, I suppose, it's a process we're going through to look at the timeframes and the dates and where we actually do our workshops and processes, and that's a great plan. It's there, but because we use that word endorse, and sometimes that sort of can lock people into a thought process, I'm just asked a question, what's the flexibility if we, the members decide they want more workshops, additional workshops? That's not a problem.
Can you see in the recommendation, Councillor Kemp, it's got noting the dates set as subject to confirmation. So those dates aren't hard locked in, and I'm sure that if we do need more workshops or the dates changed around, that would be
fair enough.
fine.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins, for clarifying that for me, but I just looked at that. I thought this recommendation actually is confirming the dates, but with flexibility, but point taken. Thank you.
Are there any further comments? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 9.7, the Local Government Reform Proposed Community Engagement Charter and feedback. I'll do the recommendation en bloc unless anybody has got any concerns about that. If somebody would like to move recommendation 1 and 2. Thank you, Councillor Littley, and thank you, Councillor Henderson, seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, Mayor, reading through this material that's been presented for us, I was struck by the issue that, yeah, we do a very good job in the council here on community consultation and engagement. And we've had some excellent examples of that recently. But one of the things that I felt was missing out of this this policy was that it's one thing to be engaging the population with an engagement plan, but on the other hand, it's one where we keep on withholding information as well, and that is in relation to the extent to which we keep matters in confidence. And even now we've got some of our business enterprises engaging in keeping their entire business in confidence. And to me, that's a massive withholding of information.
Clarify that, Councillor Robertson. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, and a couple of councillors are looking at me with queries in their eyes. Could you just clarify what you just said?
Well, the plan and the engagement plan that that we're coming up with here is one that's quite fine. But at the same time, for me, it's looking at the issue of when you're engaging and presenting information or seeking feedback from the community on, you know, on various matters, that at the same time, we withhold a lot of information because we have a tendency to use the in confidence issue quite a lot. And to me, there wasn't anything in here in terms of the feedback sort to be saying that we should be, you know, minimising the use of the in confidence as a means of engaging the community.
Do you want to respond to that? I'm not sure what Councillor Robertson means in relation to this recommendation, but you might have a good idea.
No, I think it's just feedback that Councillor Robertson is providing. Obviously, the Local Government Act provides councils with limited ability to hold matters in confidence and specific provisions under Section 90. And where we can consult with the community. And I only know these figures off the top of my head because I'm reviewing the annual report at the moment. But I do know out of the 348 items that council considered last financial year, only 23 of them were held in confidence. So I think out of the number of matters that you consider every single council meeting, there are times at which we do have to hold them in confidence. But particularly when we engage with our community, we certainly aren't holding anything in confidence. We're wanting their feedback. But you have fiduciary responsibilities as a board to consider certain things in confidence if and when required.
I'm still not sure how your commentary, Councillor Robertson, relates to the recommendation around the proposed community engagement charter from the LGA.
It's part of the to and fro of the engagement with the community is providing information to them and seeking information back from them, and it's a to and fro process. This is all about the engagement plan here is all about basically seeking information from them. It's about getting feedback. My point in here, but it's obviously falling on barren ground, is that you know, part of that process is making sure that you keep you know, you don't withhold information. And yeah, we do have a minimal amount of items that are held in confidence, but some, which was the last one we held. At the end of that, I was thinking, well, what was there in that discussion that that should have been held in confidence? But yeah, it's just a comment I have on this process here.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? In that case, I put the recommendation on block to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? We have done 10.1, so we don't need to go on that. And we have also done 10.2, so we don't need to go to that. 10.3 is the Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism Office Bearer appointments. And I can do that on block unless anybody has got any, would prefer to do item by item. Someone like to move the recommendation 1, 2 and 3 on block. Thank you, Councillor Littley, and seconded by Councillor Schofield. Either of you want to speak to that recommendation? No. Does anybody want to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Kemp.
Initially, Mayor Jenkins, thank you. It's a question to the CEO. Recommendation 3 talks about delegation of yourself to authorise and ratify the Fleurieu Peninsula Tourist Office Bearers positions. Is that just a one-off, or is that a permanent delegation that we're giving you if we approve that?
Well, it would be a permanent, but what we're actually suggesting is that the Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism amend their charter, because I think it was an anomaly of them when they undertook their review, because all other provisions required that the CEOs of each of the funding partners, we were involved in the recruitment and selection of the board members. The committee itself then appointed its office bearers, and there is a provision in there that the councils then ratify the office bearers. We felt that it was probably an anomaly in that the CEOs could ratify the appointment, but that's up to council. But the charter is within the hands of the FPT. They can amend it accordingly.
So while we're going through this process of amending and charter and stuff like that, changing this now, would if it changes back again, would we have to not undelegate you?
No, it just, the delegation would be obsolete because it would be no longer required, because it would be in their charter that the CEO would ratify their office bearers. I don't see any reason why anyone would need to ratify their office bearers, to be honest. It's not normally the case. I just think it's an anomaly, can't say it's an error in their charter. It just doesn't seem to see why they need it. Whereas you've actually now got a very strong independent board. It's really fantastic what they have got on board. It reflects the region. Kirsten Pittman was appointed from Victor Harbour. Very rarely have we had good representation of industry from Victor Harbour. Yeah, I just don't see, this is a bit of a waste in process. So what we're recommending back to FPT after doing this, and so are the other councils, going, we don't think you need this in your charter.
Thank you for the clarification on that, because I do have an issue around over-delegating to the CEO. I think certain things, or a lot of things, should stay within the powers of the chamber. But this is a bit of an anomaly in the system. I suppose it could be sorted out through their charter review. Thank you for the explanation.
Are there any further questions or commentary? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Kemper's just asked the question basically that that I was going to ask. But I did have a broader question, if I might. I know this issue, this item on the agenda is just about the office bearer positions within the committee, but I was wondering if I could ask leave to ask a more general question about the tourism.
I'll ask the chamber. Are you happy for Councillor Robertson to ask a question that's not related to the recommendations? If you're happy, can you put your hand up? If you're not happy, can you put your hand up? No, Councillor Robertson, I'm sorry. Stick to the recommendation. You may be able to ask the CEO afterwards if you've got a question that's broader in relation to Fleurieu Peninsula tourism. If there's no further questions or commentary, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. We now move to 21.1's been done, or 12.1 rather has been done. That was the avenue of trees. 12.2 are the bluff boat ramp toilets, the alternative options. I'll do that recommendation en bloc. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded by, thank you, Councillor Littley. Would either of you like to speak to that? Councillor Henderson.
I just want to say that the recommendation is very logical.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Littley, do you want to speak to that?
Just to say that we've obviously worked through a process here. We've had consultation. I do think that the recommendation is, it's one that I'd hoped had come about. So I'm obviously supporting it for that reason, but I do think it's a good outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. And I think that the $70,000, which may be offset by grant funding, I was talking to the CEO earlier on, and we're eligible for the fishing, boating and camping fund, which is specifically, for items like this, and there's a very high chance that we may be successful in that. Councillor Glassbrook.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question, if I could, in relation to the Burt Puxley Reserve. This is where the toilets are going. I've got that correct. Before I make a total fool of myself, is there going to be any reserve left, or is there going to be, I just think it's very important that we acknowledge Mr. Puxley. He was a very prominent person within the Victor Harbour Sea Rescue Squadron with the local boating community. So I'm just a little bit concerned. Perhaps we might be showing him some disrespect or something if he's losing his reserve.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Yeah, so that's a good point. The toilet block will take up most of that reserve, but we can look then to honour Mr. Bucks in a different way or a different location adjacent to the Sea Rescue Squadron area, I guess, or along the foreshore there, not next to the toilet facilities.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that's a definite priority in my opinion anyway. Thank you. So well, I'll just speak to it. I'm in favour of this. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a good location. I think, you know, we've listened to the residents. We've moved it away from the units there, which was one of the major areas that people were complaining. And I think it's logically it needs to be near the boat ramp. So I'm very much in favour of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook, and I think your point about the Mr. Buckley Reserve and actually honouring the work that he's done is really important. So thank you for bringing that up. Councillor Kemp, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I move to adjourn this recommendations on the grounds that yes, we have done public consultation on certain sites, but this is a new site which the community in the area has not had an opportunity to have their say if they prefer it or not. There are alternative sites that have been put out there, but again, the community may not have had an opportunity to look at those as well as to give their perspective. And I think considering what Councillor Glasbrook has raised about the gentleman in question, that the community might be a little bit upset that they're losing a reserve dedicated to a unique and iconic man and the work he did with Sea Rescue. So I think that's why I've adjourned, hoping that the Chamber will adjourn this for a short period of time to run another public consultation on it because of its site and the opportunity that the community has not had a chance to discuss and have a look at this site.
Do I have a second for that? Councillor Robertson. Sorry? That's right. All those in favour? Those against? Sorry, Councillor Kemp, that's lost. Back to the original. Does anybody else want to speak to the motion? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, Mayor. I fully support this proposal. There's been a lot of hard work done by the council staff on working towards this option here. Yeah, I put it on record that I think it's great that for a very large population of our recreation or sport people in Victor Harbour that we have a proper toilet facility down there. But I also have received over the last few days several queries like, is it true that the toilets are going to be rebuilt at or new toilets are going to be built in the location where this is? And my answer to that was, yes, it's coming up in front of the chamber tonight, but to let those people know that at the same time I fully support it. So yeah, I've had several queries clearly from people who are against this one. So, yep.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Is there any further debate in relation to the recommendation? Councillor Kemp, I'm not sure that you are able to speak to it because you spoke to formal motion.
I adjourned it. I tried to adjourn it. I didn't speak to the actual motion.
You did speak to the adjournment, but I will let you speak. I'll give you some leeway.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. The only query and opposition, I'm not against the facility being built and with the location where it is now. I just felt we needed to give our community some option because of design factors. I do sort of object to the $160,000. This is going to be one-off design, I believe. We're not going to have options of designs to spend that 160,000, or we go to that one design and it's going to be up to that 160,000, which I think is really you can build a house with that. So I just feel that again, we are spending more money out of our budget we don't have. It's just putting us into more deficit, where I thought the original concept of the toilet block for this 2 cubicles was insufficient, around 70,000, which has been budgeted for the original budget of 90,000. Stand corrected.
Kathy, would you like to speak?
Thank you, through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. So just taking a step back, the allocation in the budget for this project was 188,000 previously. Then when we thought we would be able to collaborate with the Whalers Inn and be able to upgrade some of their facilities, and our portion of that would be capital works assigned, aligned with the adjoining all access footpaths and accessibility to those toilets, we reduced it to 90,000. So in effect, we need to go, now we're building a standalone again. In effect, we need to go back to somewhere near our original budget, and we have a real life example in the Mitcham Council Heritage Design that the Heritage Advisor has offered us. So yes, that's why the budget is changing.
Thank you, Director Hayter. But I guess, you know, that original design of 180,000 costing was about 6 toilet blocks. This is 2. I don't see the value there. A heritage design, I don't know whether it will sit or not sit. Again, what I would like to see, if possible, a couple of designs done, you know, so we can make a decision. You know, all it talks about is going to construction and design, but I guess you're talking about a heritage one, but which I wouldn't support, but I will still certainly look at some other options of designs to see what would be better suited in that area. Because we really haven't, we've only seen some pictures which are at best maybe a bit sketchy, but yeah, so I prefer to leave it within your court to actually bring back to the chamber, hopefully some alternative designs into what 160,000 would buy.
This recommendation is that we proceed to detailed design and construction of option 3. So if the recommendation fails, Councillor Kemp, then maybe we can look. If there are any comments, if Councillor Henderson or Councillor Henderson wants to, you moved this, didn't you? Do you want to wrap it up?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, like Councillor Robertson, I want to commend the administration for a very detailed report on this. And I think we've found a location solution to a very difficult situation, and I can't wait for us to move ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'll put that to the floor now. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. And I think most of the community will out for public toilets down that end quite some time. These address some of the concerns that were raised at the community consultation in terms of size and where we were originally thinking of putting them. And so I think that that's great, a great step forward. We now move to item 12.3, Recreation and Small Grants Program. I'm happy to do recommendation 1 and 2 on block if you're happy for that. Somebody like to move that way?
I'd like to just take that one at a time if I can.
Yep, sure. So the first recommendation is receiving and noting the report. Would you like to move that way, Councillor Littley? Thank you. And seconding that, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anyone want to speak to receiving and noting the report? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The second recommendation that council endorse the following sporting club grants for the round one: the blind golf, $1,000, Great Southern Swimming, $900, Wildcat Celtics basketball, $1,000, and the YMCA, $1,000. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Littley? And do I second to Councillor Henderson? Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Littley?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that to point out, and we obviously read through then with the recommendation, the variety of options here with these sports grants, and it was probably one of the most impressive lineups of variety, diversity of sporting options, and the explanations behind them with regards to, say, the Wildcat Celtics basketball with coaching clinics, also Euphoria Aquatic, the YMCA, having additional benefits in engaging at-risk kids or kids that are perhaps disengaged, right through to blind golf, where we're going to have the benefits of, do we have blind golfers here in Victor Harbor? No, but this might be a way of opening it up. They're very good programs, and when we were on the selection committee and Councillor Mann wasn't able to be there, so I had the pleasure of being able to be part of that. But Councillor Mann's feedback there as well, we all agreed that it was a really deserving. We sometimes get in here and we have a look at these grants programs and we say it's for some tops or it's for some sports equipment, and it's just so on. These are really good programs.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Councillor Henderson, did you want to speak? Does anybody want to speak or have any questions? Councillor Kemp.
I have to, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I have to declare a perceived conflict of interest on this agenda item, recommendation 2, as I'm on the board of the Fleury Aquatic Centre, and the YMCA is our management group for that centre. So I'll use my perceived conflict of interest provisions by staying in the room, not debating and not voting.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Does anybody else have any queries or would like to contribute? I'll put it to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Station 3, you've got a choice here. Council endorsed the following sporting club grant from the Rec and Sport Small Grants Scheme, round 1. $1,000 to South Coastal Athletics for the long jump runway upgrade, or $2,000 to South Coast Little Athletics for the long jump runway upgrade. Councillor Littley.
I'd like to move the second option of $2,000 to South Coast Little Athletics, and I can speak to that if I get a seconder.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Schofield. Thank you, Councillor Littley.
Yeah, so when we were deliberating on this grants program, there is a cap of $1,000 for these grants, but there is provision to actually speak to it to perhaps go above that as well. So it makes not much sense, but it is that. We view this as the case of, and we've heard tonight already from the South Coastal Athletics, that the need for improved facilities there. The presentation of the materials there was all costed out, and you could see that this was a club that was willing to and trying to, they'd only asked for the $1,000 grant, but their costings were such that just to get the materials down there were to the point of being higher, even above 2,000, I believe, and their input of volunteer time to improve a facility that, as we know in this chamber, we've been speaking about trying to improve or find a solution for them in any case. So the reason I'm putting forward the $2,000 amount is because it shows a desire and a want to actually improve a facility on behalf of the community, and I thought that was justified. And the committee did as well. So,
thank you, Councillor Littley. Councillor Schofield, did you want to add anything?
Thank you. Yes, look, I support everything that Councillor Littley has said, especially after the presentation tonight. I think it's really well worth increasing that grant. to $2,000 because the variety of people that are in the Little Athletics, it's not just young people, it has stated tonight, elder people as well, and also the fact that we have some emerging young athletes amongst us in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Are there any questions or any further commentary? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is an excellent cause. I think council, we want to be encouraging them and assisting them at their current facility in the short term. They have been actively engaged with council throughout the long process of looking at a new sport and rec facility and where they fit in that picture. And I'm looking forward to them putting in submission in this newest consultation coming out soon, and that, you know, what that looks like, that end result, and where they fit in that, that's still a few years away. Got the detailed design or consultation this financial year, detailed design next financial year, and the build starting the financial year after that. So I think the more we can support them currently in their current facility, the better. And I think this does help go towards that. I think, yeah, it's great to see them putting this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Are there any further questions or any commentary? Councillor Littley, did you want to close the debate? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour and those against? That's carried unanimously. And yes, I think that they're very well deserving. Actually, all of the sporting clubs are very well deserving of the grants. And thank you very much to the grant committee for looking at that and for bringing that little South Coastal Athletics back to the chamber for further discussion. I think that's really important. Our next item, and then we will have a break because it will probably be 8 o'clock, is the Encounter Lakes Outlet Clean. You would have heard in your elected member update about the difficulties with the mussels and the need for the clean. So I'll do that report on that recommendation on block, unless anyone's got any other, if they prefer it not to be done. You prefer it not to be done on block, Councillor Kemp?
No, I prefer to debate each one individually, please.
Each one? All right. Can I do the receive a note as well as the endorse the increase? Or do you want me to do the receive a note separately? You want to discuss that? I'll do recommendation 1 and 2 together. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Littley, and thank you, Councillor Schofield. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Littley?
I will briefly. This issue with the lake system there, this is, I guess, a question I know it has to be cleared, but this is going to be an ongoing issue, and the costs are going to continue to be as high as they are now, and challenge council as far as, I guess, at least now we know how much they are going to be. But unfortunately, this is the result of some very, very poor judgment back when those lakes were put in, where I think there might have been a bit of craftiness going on there with shortened and narrowed, less diameter in the pipelines that went out there to intake and outlet valves. If my marine biology studies back 25 years ago with Ian Milne are correct, which they seem to be proving to be. Is there any other solution is a question. Are we investigating any other solutions? Maybe for another time, but if there's an answer now, because the cost is going to keep presenting to future councils.
I will let Kathy speak to that, but you also got to know that what we're encountering now, if we put better mitigation provisions in place, we won't have such a significant cost in the future. I don't believe we've actually had appropriate inspections and mitigations in place. I'll let Kathy add to that.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Correct, I support the CEO's statement there. So we need a better maintenance and mitigation regime, but specifically in relation to your question about are we looking at any other alternatives, we are. There's an alternative, a newer technology, a biofilm that we're just looking at to see whether if we line the inside of the duct with a biofilm, if that will prevent the mussels from accumulating, or at least accumulating in as much mass as they currently are. So there's a couple of strategies that we're looking at.
Is that all, Councillor Littley? Thank you. Councillor Schofield, did you want to speak? Right. You had a question, Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. A question to Director Hayter on the some residents around the lake have approached me saying that they've been given information which is different to what's in here about how much pipe work has been cleaned and how much tonnage of mussels have been removed. So I just want to read it out, and if you can tell us which one's correct, because it's a bit concerning when information is not correct. It goes out to the community. According to the information given, it's just that according to us in the council, that 30 metres of pipe have been cleared and 14 tonne of debris have been extracted. The residents have been given a note saying that over half the pipe has been cleaned, which is around between 76 and 80 metres, so it's about, say, 40 metres in length, and about 20 tonnes has been removed. So they're concerned at what is the truth. If I could just have a clarification on that, please.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Kemp. I believe I understand where the confusion is. I attended a meeting with the residents group, the Encounter Lakes residents group, and I believe at the time one of our staff gave an estimate of what had been cleaned and how much had been distracted. Since then, the contractors have, what had been extracted, not distracted. Since then, the contractors have given us very firm figures around how much has been removed and how much has been cleaned. So what is in the council report is accurate.
Thank you. The issue around the costings of this, and I know this has been a problem for a long time, and certainly the mussels have been building up over the years. With the new gate valve system that was put in, it increased better water flow. They removed the aerator down the boulevard end of the lake because it's not required anymore, because the quality of water is much better. Also, they've taken a fair bit out already. So I'm just wondering, why can't this be deferred into the next year financial budget? Another 6-7 months will not make a big difference to the pipe work and the flow of water out of the lake to the sea and vice versa. So I think, increasing the budget by another 110,000 to me is, if it was like that at the beginning of it, we need to do it. But we've already cleared out 14 odd tonnes, which has mostly cleared the pipes very well. Certainly, a lot of it's got to be done, and of course, that's been taken all the way out to the ocean, where the other inlet is, has to be cleaned as well. But I would have thought, unless they are near blocked, I didn't quite pick that up in the report, how bad it is out by the sea intake. And I guess that's where the rest of it's going to be cleaned. This is 110,000, and 4 years later we do it again. So I'm just wondering, two questions: can we actually defer it until the new financial year and have it incorporated into the new budget as part of that process, or can we pay for this out of savings within the current budget? Can we actually look at our budget at the moment and cover this cost within our current budget without having to increasing the budget deficit?
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Kemp. So I'll just take the first one. Can we defer it? Well, yes, technically we could. The constriction in the duct itself is estimated to be 70 to 90%, so of the actual round. So, but there is other alternates. We can reverse the flow to flush the water. We can do other things, but bearing in mind it's taken 8 months to get a diver to the point where they are currently, because they are they're specialists. It's hard to come by, and when we may lose them again and have to go through that process. And the other point I would make about the savings, that we haven't identified that level of savings, but on the 110,000, that is an estimate. We don't know. There is a chance that further along the pipe, they can't get through that pipe. The diver can't get through the pipe to tell us exactly what is at the other end. So there is some contingency in there. We are hoping that it will come back less than that at the other end of the pipe it will be more sediment or more sand rather than mussels. So the challenge at the moment is that the mussels take a lot of effort from the diver in, as you might imagine, fairly restricted space and with fairly restricted tools. It takes a lot of effort to clean. So we're hoping that at the as they get past, there'll be less mussels and more sand. So potentially the time that it takes will be reduced, and obviously the time and the cost of disposing of those mussels may also be reduced. But at this stage, we can't guarantee that.
Thank you for the explanation. I'm interested in your that you can't find cost savings under the current budget. Is that correct? Did I hear you correctly?
Can I answer that one? Sorry. It's not a matter, we are constantly looking for cost savings. So what council has adopted is a budget. It's not actual confirmed costs for every single item. We have a budget and we are working towards trying to deliver and reduce our current deficit and where we will find savings. But we actually can't function as an administration for items that are unbudgeted for. So we need to come back to you and seek an additional budget to continue on with this project. And our full intent is to find savings throughout the year for deficit. So if we can, we will, as we have each year.
Just make a comment, if I may. In our first term of office here, we had a 540,000 odd deficit, and the chamber asked the CEO to reduce that, and you found the savings of 540,000 in that first 12 months. So if it can be done, I believe it can be done. And again, it's just really, I don't see how and why we need to increase the budget by 910,000 where we have proven that we can, save $500,000 if required. We've done that in the past. I know it's hard work by the team to do that and very frustrating and upsetting, but I guess that's what I'm asking, that, let's not just close our minds off saying, no, let's not do it, because no. I just think that sometimes we have to be maybe a little bit more frugal in respect of how we run our budgets and where the savings are, and it just seems constant that we can keep coming back to the chamber asking for more and more money. And I think, well, I mean, there's got to be a line drawn somewhere, I believe, at some stage, somewhere. But if you believe that, and what you're saying is that the pipe work is nearly closed off completely, that is necessary to be done, I suppose that's something we have to wear, if that's what you're saying, through the what's being explored so far.
Through the chamber. So the advice of the inspection report was that there's a constriction of 70 to 90%.
Sorry, whereabouts? Is that at the sea intake area, or it's more around on the land-based pipe work, or out in the ocean-based pipe work?
Councillor Kemp, I'll just take that on notice for a minute while I look at the inspection report to find the exact location.
While we're waiting for that, Councillor Robertson, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I read this report and I've been listening to the debates here. I still need to understand the issues here. How long has it taken to accumulate this this wad of sand and shell grit and mussels? When was the last time that this pipe was completely clear of all of this debris?
Through the Mayor. So my understanding is that it hasn't been completely cleared in its life. So it has undergone some cleaning. So with the annual swim through, there is a bit of minor cleaning. It's also noted that in 2016, a storm event caused a significant event that attracted mussels and more sediment, which accumulated. And at that time, there was, in 2017, there was an attempt to clear it more rigorously, but they only got a little way in. So it hasn't, in answer to your question, it hasn't been cleared the whole way through ever. My understanding is when the mussels have been chipped off, they've been left to sink to the ground, but they haven't been vacuumed out and taken away. So as a result, the accumulated mass of mussel shells on the bottom has been, the sediment has built up on top of that, and now it is the significant constriction that it is.
A question perhaps, Kathy, you may be able to answer, or the CEO may be able to answer. If the people that have been contracted to clean out the pipes have not done that properly and have allowed sediment to drop and the mussel to build up, is there any way that we could be compensated for that?
Thank you, through the Mayor. No, so those people that have been contracted to clear or clean the ducts previously have been contracted to do just that, to go through and do a swim through and chip off what they can, but they don't come with the full like high pressure water. They don't block off the end of the pipe to stop the highly charged tidal waters coming through. And they don't come with the vacuum truck to pump out the mussels. So all they are required to do is a swim through and some, I guess if you like, maintenance, not actually clear it out. This time it's completely different. They've been contracted to clean it out completely.
In the future, will they be, actually that's the third recommendation, isn't it? So allowance made for regular sediment removal. You've got on a 4-yearly cycle. Shouldn't that be every year when they look at it? It should be cleared out, that sediment should be taken out.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So the annual swim through will still happen, but the inspection that took place indicated that this is unusual for it to build up this much, and that if we more carefully, I guess, cleaned it on a more regular cycle, like 4 yearly, it might not even need 4 yearly, but we're saying let's do it every 4 years to prevent this happening again, that this shouldn't happen again. They also, the inspection report also pointed out that 2016 was an extraordinary year in terms of the build-up. So we are thinking that a swim through every year, which is what we will continue to do with the minor works, but an actual pump out and scraping every 4 years will maintain the duct.
Thank you. You've got further questions, Councillor Robertson?
No, I had another one, but I was waiting for Kathy's response, and then you got in on.
Oh, so I beg your pardon. I thought that you had already asked.
No, I was waiting for her to find something, I think. I was, what's your word, Kathy? Hang in there or stay tuned? I was staying tuned. So that's good. If it's been 33 years since this system was put in place, and so this is really the first time that it's been given a thorough clean out, really proper thorough clean out. And so, yeah, now I get it. It's much because the budget that we had before for $60,000, I presume, was for a diver to go down there and swim through the whole thing and chip off the odd mussel and come out the other end, and thank you very much, there's my fee. Whereas this time we're doing the job properly. So yeah, I think that's good. And then in relation to, that was the other question I didn't get from this report was, but I get it now, is that if we do this job properly now, then it'll be that if we do it properly every year, chip off whatever's there every year, that's going to be a better deal than waiting for it to clog up. It reminds me of the dredging of the boat ramp channel, exactly the same issue. And so do you have any idea of having, if we spend the money to get this completely cleaned out this year, does that mean that the future operating budgets for this particular job will be way less than 60,000, I presume, if you address it every year? Because we've got two things there. One is probably more serious or more turbulent storm events, is what's being predicted under the climate change scenario. but also whether or not the mussels, which seem to be the major problem, but the mussels are doing better, breeding faster or whatever in those circumstances. That it might pay to have, at least once every 4 years or maybe less to have it properly done, so to speak.
Thank you through the Mayor. And yes, I do use the term stay tuned, Councillor Robertson, but yes, the point of this is that hopefully with a more rigorous maintenance regime, it will be much more cost effective than just doing it in a one-off big hit like this. So hopefully in the out years, once we've done this, it will be more cost effective. And if I can just, through the Mayor, if I can just continue on and answer Councillor Kemp's question. I'm going to read this, Councillor Kemp. So I'm quoting from the Inspection and Maintenance of Lake Water Control Mechanisms, January 2020, from an expert. In 2022, significant impediments to water flow through the lake outlet were found. The almost complete coverage of the lake outlet grid by mussels, approximately 90%, and a constriction by sediments and mussels to water flow in the lake outlet duct at about 50 metres from the control structure, similar but not quite as severe, 71% constricted as the 2017 constriction, 85 to 90% constricted.
Thank you very much for that. And I just have one more question.
Councillor Robertson's finished. You finished with your questions, Councillor Robertson? Yep. Sorry. Okay, Councillor Kemp. One more question.
Yeah, just clarification. We did budget originally, was that 173,000 to do this job originally? Now another 110,000. That'll make a 283,000 project. Is that correct, or have I misread the date? Because the original project was to clean it was 173, I believe.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. You're kind of right. That budget line has that amount in it, but it also takes into account other maintenance, other things around the Encounter Lakes, including the pump that's been taken out, then some of the new works that have had to happen in and around it. So it hasn't just been the cleaning, it's also been the pump extraction, and that second pump is due to go back in the next couple of weeks. So there's a raft of other maintenance things that come out of that line item.
Okay, thank you. Just a finalised question, please. So what is the total cost for this project, including the 110,000, if it's approved tonight?
I believe it will be around 160.
Are there any further questions or any further commentary? Councillor Littley, do you want to close the debate? In that case, I put recommendation 1 and 2 to the floor. Did you want to say something, Councillor Glasbrook? Did you want to close the debate, Councillor Littley? No. In that case, I put the recommendations 1 and 2 to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried unanimously. The third recommendation is that an allowance be made for regular sediment removal on a 4-yearly cycle, and this be included in the long-term financial plan amendments register for consideration in the next review. Councillor Schofield moving that way and Councillor Henderson seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that or have any questions? Councillor Kemp.
I'm just wondering whether this recommendation locking us into a 4-year cycle, or should it be amendment where as required? Could be 2 years and we need to do it. Could be 5 years, but I'm just saying 4 years seems, for planning purpose, I understand the budget cycle, but for purposes of maintaining the costs down and a regular free sediment pipework, should we not change it? I'll move an amendment to, I'll move an amendment that an allowance be made for the regular sediment removal on a as required, and that this be included in the long-term financial plan. I'm not quite sure if that works, the long-term financial plan for budgeting purposes, but I think it should be as required, because I do want to come back to the chamber and say we need to clean it out now. You know, yet we locked ourselves into a 4-year cycle.
Just ask the
a bit of
CEO,
flexibility, that's all.
Just ask the CEO to speak to that before we ask for a seconder for that formal motion?
Effectively, as required won't work in the long-term financial plan. So the whole idea is about actually, and we're obviously suggesting you put it on the register, and we would have more detailed information by the time this clean is done, and we'll get some more advice in regards to that we're saying for yearly. If it's incorporated in a long-term financial plan, and we don't need it, then it's removed. But if we don't have it in there, you're going to have surprises like we're having right now. So as required, do we put it every year? It doesn't work.
Thank you for that. Look, I'll withdraw my amendment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Does anybody else want to speak to recommendation 3? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour and those against? It is 10 past 8. And if you can come back at 20 past 8, we'll continue. Thank you very much. All right, we're up to item 13.1, which is the Fleurieu Region Community Service Advisory Committee minutes. The recommendation is to receive and note the minutes. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Either of you want to speak to the minutes? Does anybody have any questions or want to speak to the minutes? In that case, then I'll put the minutes to the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 13.2, the City Activation and Strategic Planning minutes for the 6th of October. Would someone like to move the recommendation, receiving and noting them? Thank you, Councillor Robertson, and seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Either of you want to speak to them or have any questions? Does anybody want to speak to them or have any questions? In that case, I'll put all those in favour. Those against? Thank you, that's carried. CEO Performance Review Committee minutes, the recommendations, receiving and noting them. Does somebody like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Kemp, and seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Either of you want to speak to those or have any questions? Anybody have any questions or want to speak to the minutes? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We have the subsidiaries and representative reports, and the recommendation is to receive and note them. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to any of them or have any questions about any of them? Does anybody have any questions about any of them or want to speak to any of them? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 14.2 is the Fleurieu Aquatic Centre Annual Report and Financial Statements, and the recommendation is receiving and noting them. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconding Councillor Robertson. Would either of you like to speak to that? Would anybody like to speak to that? In that case, I'll put that recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. The mayoral report for October, the recommendation is that council receive and note the mayoral report. Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconded Councillor Schofield. Are there any questions about that? If there are no questions, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried. I just have a question regarding the mayoral report and the elected member reports. Is it possible, and this sort of is more of a governance and agenda question to the CEO, rather than have the mayoral report and elected member reports as separate, can they be just member reports and the recommendation is to receive and note the mayoral report, two, the elected member reports? It just saves us it just saves a little bit. Is that possible?
So the order of business, the items, is a resolution of council. We've resolved in regards to those items, so I'm happy to bring that back and change that item to one. That's easily done.
If that can be done, they'll just. Is the chamber happy with that? I'm getting nods. Yep, thank you. 15.2 is the elected member reports, and the recommendation is that council receive and note the reports. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconded by, thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you have any questions or any comments in relation to that? Does anybody? In that case, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 15. There are no matters of urgency, and the question on notice, which by Nick Hales, in relation to the Fleurieu, the future recreation facilities consultation, the answer is also in there. But we are also able to say publicly that we've bought the George Main Road land behind the TAFE site, and that land can also be considered as a possible location for future recreation facilities as well. So that can be added to Councillor Hales's answer on that. We now move up to 21.1, which is confidential items.
Questions on without notice?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I missed that. Questions without notice? You have a question, Councillor Lidley.
I do. I have 3 questions, and I have them here that I can then supply as well. But questions on 3 topics, if I can, if you can bear with me. So my topic number 1 is the file fuel load management. These all stem from recent discussions over the weekend, so I apologise for not being able to share with members before tonight, but it has only just happened when these have come about in the last 24, 48 hours, and I was unable to get them to you. The fire fuel load management, the date for the start of the fire danger season has now been set for December 1. Can Council Administration Works please provide an update on progress for fire fuel load on Council managed reserves? And if possible, a brief overview of our strategic approach to manage fire fuel loads with available resources. The aim of this is to instill some confidence in our community that we're working hard at that to meet that deadline as well. Is there available, a secondary part to this, is there available an update on the progress of compliance or evidence of action by private landholders to meet requirements for fire fuel management? i.e., as a whole, where are we at in making us safe in Victor Harbour and surrounds? If that's available, I would appreciate its provision if we got something from the CFS or the like on how we are going as a community in managing our fire fuel load.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. I think that's a very, very pertinent question for this time of year, and I too have seen some of the community concerns that have been raised and had people from the community talking about that. So thank you. You had another question?
I'll take the questions on notice. Obviously, a fair bit of information was provided in the elected member update as to our action plan, but in regards to specifics around our own scheduled program, any additional information, we'll provide it to members.
Thank you. Secondary topic, our next topic is Main Street Traders Precinct and the practice of footpath stalls or putting stuff outside your shop. Am I able to please get details for myself, and if it's shared with other members, that's fine, on the requirements for the placing by traders of stalls, stands, signs and tables for the purpose of sales business operations on footpaths adjacent to their business? So what are the rules and regulations and requirements? If I could get that detail, I'd be appreciative to work with a member of the community, the business community. And my third topic, the Bluff Boat Ramp priority parking. Is Council Administration able to confirm the reason behind provision of dedicated parking spots for commercial operators at the Bluff Boat Ramp? Is the provision for ratepayer operators only? Does this mean a commercial operator who becomes a ratepayer would be provided the same priority parking? Because I think the answer to my question number 2 is yes. That's my understanding. And how will Council manage the angst caused should those parks prioritised for commercial operators be empty and unusable at peak times when managing large volumes of visitor boating vehicles? I can speak to that if anyone, if it was like, but they're my questions.
Again, I'm happy to take that one on notice. And obviously we did do our research before issuing those parking permits to those commercial fishing operators who are ratepayers of the City of Victor Harbour. And they are the only licensed commercial operators, because that was another criteria. And each application is considered on its merit. And we obviously need to take that into consideration. The reasons that they were issued in the first place was because those commercial operators have difficulty getting parking spaces when we are in peak periods. That is their main intent.
Am I able to provide some background? Not dismissing the fact that I've had a number of local boat users come to me and ask about the instance of the...
These are questions, Councillor Lidley. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll ask, once again, I'll ask the chamber if they're happy for you to provide a short commentary And if they are, then I'm more than happy for you to do that. Can you raise your hand if you're happy for Councillor Littley to provide a short commentary to his questions? 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 5. Thank you, Councillor Littley, please.
The reason I'm asking these questions is because as a member or the chair of the boating advisory or the boating working party, we don't get to, or that party doesn't keep the minutes of those meetings and doesn't, well, we can make suggestions and recommendations. It's not obviously as formalised as many other meetings. This issue of permanent parking for some of our charter operators was discussed at length at a number of meetings. And Councillor Robinson might be able to acknowledge it, but in my mind, it was discussed between the members of that party, of that group, that it wasn't a good look and it would create some issues there. So it was always discussed in that context that we don't want to set a precedent. How do we come about it? And the concern is that within moments of putting blue paint down on the boat ramp there in that area for priority parking, we have some real angst, and that's the reason I'm raising it, for the benefit of the members and to see if I can get some answers to go back to members of the public with.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Are there any motions on notice?
I've got a question.
Sorry, you've got a couple of questions. Councillor Glassbrook, then Councillor Kemp.
This is just a couple of quick questions in relation to item 12.2, the Puxley Reserve. Does the reserve on Bridge Terrace, is that officially been named? I've just recall from when we're going through the realignment of the bike track that reserve hadn't been officially named. And if so, I was wondering if we could consider that in relation to Mr. Puxley.
I'll need to take that on notice. I'm not sure whether it is officially named, so we can look on our records and I can advise.
Another question is just a little bit of advice. Do I need to move a motion in relation to progressing this issue of motion without notice? Because I'm quite concerned that this could cause some more angst amongst the boating community, that this reserve situation be resolved as soon as possible. So do I need to make a formal notification, or is staff able to take that on board?
I am very clearly able to take it on board and will, but if it makes you feel more comfortable in terms of giving indication to the community that you've instructed me to take it on board, there's no reason why you can't move a motion about it.
Councillor Kemp, you had questions without notice?
Yeah, thank you, Ms Jenkins. Look, this is just a clarification around the answer that the administration gave to Councillor Hales on his question, talking about non-council partners in future recreational facilities. And the answer is that partnerships with one or more local schools. So that's the only non-council entities that we will have partnerships with, or there'll be others, because that's what the answer is. So is that locking in to schools only and no one else?
They're the only ones that we've had at this stage, but Kathy may want to add to that.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So that description there about the partnerships with one or more of the local schools refers only to the locations, not necessarily the partnerships per se of who might be involved in that precinct. So we already know that there are many other partners interested in collaborating with us on the development of the precinct, but just in terms of the location, it could be with one or more of the schools.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions without notice? There are no motions on notice. Any motions without notice? Councillor Glassbrook.
Look, I would like to move the motion. I know that the CEO will take it on board, but I just think if the phone starts ringing next week, when this gets out, it would be good for council to be able to say that, yes, we're aware of this situation and we're going to do something about it. So just needs to be a simple motion that council administration find an alternative location for the Puxley Reserve as soon as possible, or something along those lines. If I could, please. Thank you.
Councillor Schofield. I will take that. Usually, as you know, I don't take motions without notice, but given that that is very simple, that there are no financial aspects to it, I'm happy to take that. Glasbrook, seconded by Councillor Schofield. Does anybody want to speak to that at all? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The next item is the confidential item, and it's the confidential part of the City Activation and Strategic Planning. Councillor Schofield. Planning minutes from the first recommendation is going into confidence. I will take that that you've read that recommendation and you know the reasons why. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Littley, and seconded by Councillor Henderson. Does anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. Thank you very much, Gallery.